All right, so one of the most dreaded things that happens to a military officer or senior non-commissioned officer in the military is when they get notification that they're now subject of an investigation, whether that investigation is a command-directed investigation or a military law enforcement investigation, whether it's MPI or CID. What should a service member do when they get notice of an investigation, right? Because when a service member comes under investigation, they're not entitled to have an attorney-client relationship with military detailed counsel or legal assistance counsel. So what should they do?
One of the first things I would recommend doing is getting educated on the process, and contacting a civilian defense counsel is a great way to do that. There are so many things that the subject of an investigation can do and shouldn't do very early on, and it's just really hard for the average person, the average service member, to know what those things are or are not. And some of them are absolute landmines that can make the difference between an investigation not leading anywhere and you getting to kind of resume your life versus the first domino falling. And once that domino falls with regard to an investigation being founded, there are more dominoes that continue to fall from there, whether it's, an Article 15 that comes from that, whether it is some sort of a general officer memorandum of reprimand, all the way up to separation. And if it's a criminal investigation, there's even more at risk. So it's so important to get to a civilian defense counsel, get some good information, get some good guidance before that first domino falls.
One of the most difficult questions for somebody under investigation to answer is, should I give a statement? And how would someone know whether to give a statement or not?
Well, I think number one, you should never give a statement alone and on your own without an attorney by your side. You don't know what you don't know, right? And so you don't know what other witnesses have said. You don't know what other evidence may be out there. So it's very important that you get an attorney that can navigate that course for you, talk to other witnesses, conduct their own kind of side collateral investigation to understand what kind of environment that you're working in before you act. By act, I mean giving a statement. There are appropriate times when you may not want to give a statement. There are other times when giving a statement is in your best interest, but absolutely do not do that alone without an attorney.
Brian, I agree. I mean, most civilian defense counsel that I know typically have the starting point is never cooperate, don't give a statement, do not. And I personally don't believe that's necessarily the answer. I think that you can give limited statements, but they have to be crafted very carefully with an experienced defense counsel who knows the process, right? I've personally served as an investigating officer a half dozen times, so I know what investigating officers do. I know how they create a command-directed investigation. I know what they look for. So I can advise a client specifically, here's what that IO is really looking for. And whether or not we agree to a video interview, a phone interview, a Zoom interview, or written questions, we can control. If you hire a defense counsel, you can control what the interview is itself, right? Because you have the right to not talk at all. So you can control how broad or how narrow that particular interview can be.
And sometimes when you're in a situation and you're living the reality of it every day, it becomes very difficult to parse out and distinguish what is legally relevant information and what is kind of the background noise of what's typically a complicated situation. I've dealt with clients that'll come in and just lay it all out on the table, and something that we help do is to take those bits and pieces that are incredibly important and not to include the things that are going to confuse or distract within the statement. And I think that background experience of understanding what's important is something that you get with a civilian defense counsel specifically.
Yeah, and I think that the type of investigation really matters. And since all of us have these decades of experience, we know the difference between an IGX investigation, a criminal investigation. whatever investigation it may be, we've seen it and we know how to deal with it. We know when to intervene, we know when to sit and wait, we know when to engage command, we know when to engage investigators. And I think that's what we bring to the table.
One of the most effective things that I've done as a legal counsel on an investigation is direct that investigator, right? Because let's face it, these command-directed investigators are usually, field grade officers who may have never conducted an investigation before. We've conducted thousands of investigations throughout our military career just in the course of what we do. And sometimes saying, hey, have you considered interviewing these witnesses for these reasons? Or have you looked at finding this evidence that exists for this purpose? Helps direct that investigation and lead to a positive outcome.